Daniel grew up in a small, poor neighborhood where people learned very early not to dream too big. His father worked long hours doing difficult physical work. His mother stayed home and took care of the family. There was never much money. Sometimes Daniel would come home and see his mother quietly calculating bills at the kitchen table. She would move one bill to the side, then another, and sometimes she would simply close her notebook and stare at the wall. Daniel knew what that meant. There wasn't enough money, but his mother never complained. She always told him, "Daniel, just work hard and become a good man." Those words stayed with him. From a very young age, Daniel dreamed of building a successful life. He didn't know exactly how. He didn't have a perfect plan, but he knew one thing. He didn't want to spend his entire life struggling just to survive. He wanted more. He wanted to change his family's life. He wanted to give his parents the comfort they had never experienced. But whenever Daniel talked about his dreams, people laughed. One day, he told one of his classmates, "Someday I'm going to build my own business." His friend laughed. "You?" Daniel smiled. "Yes, me." His friend looked around the tiny classroom and said, "Daniel, you don't even have enough money for a proper lunch. How are you going to build a business?" Everyone laughed. Daniel didn't answer. He simply walked away. But that night, those words stayed in his mind. For the first time, he wondered, maybe they're right. After finishing school, Daniel struggled to find a decent job. He applied everywhere, company after company, interview after interview, and the answer was always the same. "No experience, not qualified. We found someone better. Sorry." Rejection became part of his daily life. One morning, Daniel walked into an office for another interview. He was wearing his best shirt. It wasn't expensive. It wasn't even new, but he had ironed it carefully. He sat in the waiting room for almost an hour. Finally, the manager called him inside. The interview lasted less than 10 minutes. The manager looked at his application and asked, "What skills do you have?" Daniel paused. "I am willing to learn." The manager smiled slightly. "That wasn't my question." Daniel looked down. He knew he didn't have an impressive answer. The manager handed the application back.
"We need someone with experience." Daniel thanked him and walked out. Outside the building, he stood on the sidewalk. People were walking past him. Cars were moving. The city was busy. But Daniel felt completely alone. He looked at the sky and whispered, "How am I supposed to change my life if nobody will give me a chance?" For a moment, he wanted to quit. But then he remembered his mother. "Just work hard and become a good man." So Daniel went home. And the next morning, he started again. Eventually, Daniel found a small job. It wasn't the job he wanted. It wasn't glamorous. And it didn't pay much. But he accepted it. Every morning, he woke up before sunrise. He worked all day, then he came home exhausted. Most people would have spent the evening relaxing, but Daniel did something different. He started learning. He borrowed books. He watched free educational videos. He studied successful businesses. He learned about communication. He learned about sales. He learned about money. He learned about discipline. And most importantly, he learned that success wasn't something that happened overnight. It was built slowly, one decision at a time, one habit at a time, one day at a time. His friends noticed the change. One evening, one of them asked, "Why are you always studying? Just enjoy your life." Daniel smiled. "I'm enjoying." His friend laughed. "You call this enjoying life?" Daniel replied, "No, I'm building the life I want to enjoy later." His friend shook his head. "You're wasting your time." Daniel didn't argue. He had learned something important. You don't have to explain your vision to people who cannot see. Months passed. Daniel saved every little amount he could. He stopped buying things he didn't need. He stopped wasting money. He stopped wasting time. He stopped spending hours trying to impress people. His goal became simple: become better every single day. Then one day, Daniel finally decided to start a small business. He had saved enough money to take the first step. It wasn't much, but it was everything he had. He bought a few basic supplies, created a simple plan, and started. He was excited. For the first few days, things looked promising. Then reality hit. Customers didn't come. Sales were terrible. Money started disappearing. Daniel became worried. One week passed, then another. His small business was losing money. People noticed. Someone said, "I told you this wouldn't work." Another person laughed. "You should have stayed at your old job." Even some of Daniel's relatives told him, "Stop wasting your time. Get a normal job." Those words hurt. But Daniel continued. He changed his strategy. He studied his mistakes. He asked customers for feedback. He improved his service. He worked longer. He learned more. And slowly, things began to change. Not dramatic, not overnight, but little by little. One customer became two. Two became five. Five became 10. Daniel started making small profits. For the first time, he saw something he had never seen before. Progress. It was small, but it was real. Then came the biggest setback of his life. One morning, Daniel discovered that a major mistake had cost him almost everything he had earned. Years of effort seemed to disappear overnight. His savings were gone. His business was struggling, and he was exhausted. That night, Daniel sat alone in his room. He stared at his hands. He thought about everything he had sacrificed. The late nights, the early mornings, the rejection, the insults, the failures. And now, it felt like he was back at the beginning. He couldn't hold it anymore. For the first time in years, Daniel cried. He whispered, "Maybe I really can't do this." That sentence stayed in the room. Silence. Then he noticed something on his desk. An old photograph of his parents. He picked it up. His mother was smiling. His father was standing beside her. Daniel remembered their sacrifices. He remembered watching his father come home exhausted. He remembered his mother pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. And suddenly, something inside Daniel changed. He realized something. Failure was not proof that he couldn't succeed. Failure was proof that he was trying. He wiped his tears. He stood up and he said, "I'm not finished." The next morning, Daniel started again. But this time, he was different. He stopped trying to prove people wrong. He started trying to prove himself right. He stopped worrying about what people were saying. He focused on what he could control. His work, his discipline, his attitude, his learning, his consistency. Every morning, he wrote one sentence in his notebook. "Today, I will become 1% better." Some days he improved. Some days he failed. Some days he felt motivated. Other days he didn't. But he continued because Daniel finally understood something most people never learn. You cannot depend on motivation. Motivation comes and goes. Discipline stays. There were mornings when he didn't want to get out of bed. He got up anyway. There were days when he wanted to quit. He worked anyway. There were moments when nobody encouraged him. He encouraged himself. And that was when his life truly began to change. 1 year later, Daniel's business was no longer struggling. It was growing. He hired his first employee, then another, then another. The same people who once laughed at him began noticing his success. One of his old friends approached him one day. He smiled and said, "Daniel, I always knew you could do it." Daniel smiled back, but he remembered. He remembered the nights when nobody believed him. He remembered the people who told him to quit. He remembered sitting alone in his room wondering if his dream was impossible. And he realized something. He didn't need revenge. He didn't need to prove anyone wrong. His success was already the answer. Years later, Daniel returned to the same neighborhood where he grew up. The streets looked the same. The buildings looked the same. But Daniel was different. He walked past the place where his friends had once laughed at his dreams. He remembered the boy he used to be. Poor, confused, afraid, but hopeful. He smiled because that boy had refused to quit. Daniel eventually achieved the success he had dreamed about. But the greatest thing he gained wasn't money. It was confidence. It was discipline. It was the knowledge that he could survive difficult times. And most importantly, he discovered that the greatest battle was never against the people who doubted. The greatest battle was against the voice inside his own head telling him to give up. So listen carefully. If you're watching this video right now and you're struggling, maybe nobody believes in you. Maybe your family doesn't understand your dreams. Maybe your friends think you're wasting your time. Maybe you failed so many times that you're beginning to doubt yourself. Maybe you're looking at your life and thinking, when will things finally change? I want you to remember Daniel, because your current situation is not your final destination. Being broke doesn't mean you'll always be broke. Failing doesn't mean you're a failure. Being rejected doesn't mean you're worthless. Starting late doesn't mean you're finished. And being alone doesn't mean you're weak. Sometimes you simply need more time, more patience, more discipline, more courage. Your life can change dramatically from one decision, but that decision has to come from you. You have to decide that you will stop waiting for someone to save you. Stop waiting for perfect circumstances. Stop waiting for motivation. Stop waiting for everyone to believe in you. Because here's the truth. They don't have to believe in you. You have to believe in yourself. Maybe today you're at the bottom. Good. Start there. Maybe you only have 1 hour a day. Use that hour. Maybe you only have a small amount of money. Start with what you have. Maybe you don't have support. Build yourself anyway. Maybe you're afraid. Do it afraid. Because courage doesn't mean you aren't scared. Courage means you're scared, but you keep moving. You don't need to see the entire staircase. You only need to take the next step. One step, then another, then another. And one day you will look back and realize how far you've come. The people who laughed at your beginning may see your success. The people who doubted you may congratulate you. But by then, their opinions won't matter anymore, because you will finally understand that your journey was never about proving them wrong. It was about becoming the person you always knew you could be. So if you're thinking about quitting today, don't make a permanent decision based on a temporary struggle. Rest if you need to. Cry if you need to. Take a step back if you need to. But don't give up. Your story isn't over. The chapter you're living right now may be painful, but it isn't the ending. Sometimes the hardest chapter comes right before the biggest transformation. Remember this. Nobody may believe in you today. That's okay. Keep working. Keep learning. Keep improving. Keep showing up. Because one day, the same people who asked, "Who do you think you are?" may look at you and ask, "How did you do it?" And you won't need to say anything. Your life will answer for you. So get up. Start again. Work in silence. Build in silence. Grow in silence. And let your results make the noise. Because your future self is waiting for you. And one day, you will look back at this difficult period of your life and realize it wasn't the thing that broke you. It was the thing that built you. And when that day comes, you will finally understand why you had to struggle, why you had to fail, why you had to be rejected, why nobody believed in you. Because you were never meant to become the person they expected. You were meant to become the person you chose to become. And that person starts with what you do today. Don't quit. Your story is still being written.